Okay, it's Women's Day, and we are here to talk about a great conversation with regards to a lot of issues, but now let's talk about health. And the numbers have been surging ever since COVID-19 came in play when it gets to the girl child and the women. And today, joining me this morning, I have Dr. Carole Sekimpi, the country director from Marie Stops Uganda. Many of you know Marie Stops because of a lot of things, family planning, of course. That is the thing. And she's not only that country director, she's the chairperson of the Uganda Family Planning Consortium. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Andrew.
Well, I was telling you about my conversation about Marie Stops, how I learned what Marie Stops does and how I kept testing again and again. But looking at the Women's Day today, let's focus our conversation there. What does this mean to Marie Stops when we get to a day like this about women and when we look at the conversation of family planning on Women's Day?
Thank you, Andrew, and happy International Women's Day to everyone out there. So for us as Marie Stops, as you know, our mission is to empower every woman to determine the number and timing of their births.
Yes.
But it's not just about births. This is really core to women emancipation.
Oh, yes.
It is core to development. It is for the family and for the nation as a whole.
Oh, yeah.
When a woman chooses the timing of her children, she's able to take good care of them. She can breastfeed them long enough so they grow well. She has breaks between babies. She can be a good hot wife to her spouse. She has time to deal with her career and moving forward. She has an opportunity to move her enterprise.
Yes.
She can contribute meaningfully to her country. She can pay taxes.
True.
So the whole community benefits.
Yes.
So really, many people think about family planning as family planning, but family planning is really central to women emancipation, central to economic development.
Yes.
There's hardly any country that has moved from low income, middle to first class status without getting fertility under control.
Oh, yes.
And it's not about how many children you have. It's about the choice.
The choice you make.
Women need to choose. Babies shouldn't just happen.
Oh, yes.
We should choose to have them.
I
think
like
that's
that.
the real distinction with family planning.
Oh, yes. So from your perspective as Marie Stops, when you look at the women today, have they gotten to the level of decision making that they're part and parcel of when to have babies, not just men saying, Njagala mwana? And are they firm enough to speak and say, well, from my plan, I think we can pause?
We have a long way to go.
Okay.
We must acknowledge that we've made progress.
Yes.
As a country, when you use the numbers to answer that question, our contraceptive prevalence rate has grown significantly over the last 10 years. Right now, we're trending at 35 to 39, depending on which stats you use. But our goal as a country was to be at 50% contraceptive prevalence. So if only 35% of women who are married or active sexually are having a method of contraception, then that means for the others, the 70-some% pregnancies just happen.
Yes.
Or they are using non-scientific methods which have their limitations. But we are making progress. I must acknowledge that we're making progress. By the end of 2020, 1.8 million women in Uganda were using a method of family planning provided by Marie Stops. And we're not the only ones in the business.
Oh, yes.
There are many others in the business. So that tells you that we are progressing. Now, in terms of decision making, where our economy is going and the pressures of just being alive, saying time for children to go to school and everyone is arms in the air. These are also family planning methods. So the conversation gets easier as the bills start to come in.
That's when you get to know the real thing.
Exactly. So as our society becomes more and more commercial, the conversation on family planning becomes easier because the cost of raising children is practical. Yeah.
And how do we bridge that gap? How do we bring the men on board about this? I understand it's a lot about the women, but how do we bring the men on board that they can understand how deep this conversation goes?
Andrew, that's a hard question.
But you're at the core, and I want to get this before we just let this thing
It's a hard question. There are things we can do at a macro level and things we can do at a micro level. At a macro level, policies that encourage men to participate, male champions. You've had the president supporting family planning.
Oh,
He
yes.
attends our conferences.
Even me, I support family planning.
Exactly. We have more and more men talking about it.
Yes.
It does help with this. I talked about the economics. It's about messaging. If you see, you have to speak, you cater to the heart. If what men care about is success and money, then you provide family planning messages that cater to that.
Oh, yeah.
Help them to see the economic benefit of planning their families.
Oh, yes.
But then at a micro level, for me, and this is where my focus is in the home, in the household. How do we bring up our children? How do we socialize them? Let's bring up our boys to respect girls, to appreciate that boys and girls are equal. Let's bring up our girls to be independent and ambitious.
Yes.
Let's bring up our children to, to want to do things. That way we'll have sustainable change that doesn't have to be driven by some project which is talking too much.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so because
so it starts from the home.
if we start at home, then in a couple of years we'll achieve sustainable change because our children will think differently
Oh, yeah.
from now when we're having to push the agenda from the outside.
Well, thank you so much. That is Dr. Carole Sekimpi, the country director from Marie Stops Uganda and the chair of Uganda Family Planning Consortium. Be a part of this conversation. I like what she said. She said, let's nurture and raise our children, especially the girl child, who wants to be independent, but again ambitious. That is something great. Your last word to the girls and the women out there today on a Women's Day.
Well, to my fellow women,
Oh, yes.
dare to dream, dare to challenge the status quo. The barriers are many, but we've got this. We can do this. And I mean, Kamala Harris for me
Yes.
is the standard now.
That's it.
Until I become the vice president
vice
or the
president.
president of the US, I haven't arrived.
Oh, yes.
But I always want to bring this to context. Success doesn't always have to be in the work arena.
Yes.
If you have a stall selling 3 bogoyas,
Yes.
multiply that to 9.
So be it.
If you have a school, a kindergarten, grow it into a primary school. If you have a farm, a garden of 1 plot, multiply it. That's the sky's the limit. Everyone can be better
Yes.
from whatever baseline they're coming from.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. That brings us to the great conversation. We bring it to the end. And I really want to thank you, Dr. Caroline Sekimpi, the country director, Marie Stops Uganda, and the chair lady of Uganda Family Planning Consortium. Be a part of this conversation. Follow her on Twitter and follow Marie Stops Uganda on Twitter and the different platforms. Now, my colleague Ivan Kamana Welnyolo from Entebbe talked to one of our journalists. She's been in the industry for the last 20 years, and that's a conversation we'll be having later in the day. But I want to thank all the ladies who have been a part of this show from where we started to where we are. And the men, the question of inclusion, join the conversation, get on board, and let's run this. Coming up next is my sister, Farida Nakasba, with a conversation of women in business.